I'm excited about the session. I was hoping to listen, but now I get to talk, so this is even better. Cameron, let's just start with the basics. Tell us about you and kind of how the journey to Yum.
Sure. We didn't talk about which sides. Like, I'm not an ambi turner, so I'm not sure if this is going to work for me.
You can talk to them.
No, it's nothing like starting with a good Zoolander reference. No, hey, first of all, thank you. Treasure Data, great job pulling this off. If you've ever done one of these, you know it's not easy. And then, look, I get to go last right before lunch. So thanks, Kaz. Yeah, that's cool. No, I think a little bit about me, if you don't know, it's not that important so much as Yum Brands and why we're here. Let's start. How many of you even have heard of Yum? Let's just start there. Okay, a few people. We are the world's largest restaurant company in total scale. We have over 60,000 units across 155 different countries, about 60 billion in system sales. But most people have never heard of Yum. Now, you've heard of Taco Bell, you've heard of Pizza Hut, because nobody out-pizzas the Hut. And we're wrapping today. You've heard of KFC, which surprises people that that's actually our largest brand. If you're in the US, you'd be okay, but KFC is actually a really cool brand if you go into Asia, a couple of other places, and coming back here in the US in a really solid way. And then Habit Burger, which is kind of our newest brand out on the West Coast. So I've been with Yum about 3 years. I run kind of data and analytics at the core. Before that, I spent most of my time in media with NBC Universal and in 20-some years where I grew up at Disney.
Great. So you titled this session, Inflection Points and the Role of Change Management. So why do you think we're at an inflection point? And then how does change management fit into that?
Yeah, I think we are at an inflection point. We could have played a drinking game the last 2 days every time you heard the term GenAI. And we'd all be pretty happy right now, right? I used to think, thank God for Tom Davenport. And when he wrote Competing on Analytics all those years ago, it changed the nature of those conversations and how people thought about it. I think ChatGPT and GenAI has done the exact same thing. Most of us were doing it already, or some form of it, but it really elevated the conversation. And now people are asking things like, well, Cam, what's our GenAI strategy? I'm like, I don't know, tell me the color of your blockchain and I'll tell you my GenAI strategy. But I think we know it's going to change how we work and interact, and we're going to have to figure it out. The thing we always have to keep in mind is there are somewhere around the area of 8 billion plus people on the planet. And how many people in the audience are parents? You got kids? Right. I got 2 kids and 6 grandkids. And one of the most fun things about being a grandparent is watching your grandchildren do the same thing to their parents that your kids did to you. Right? And you say, look at a child and say, I need you to do this. And the 3-year-old looks at you and says, you can't tell me what to do. And like, no, it's literally in my job description, right, to tell you what to do. That comes out of us as humans, this sense of agency. When we're 2 years old, 1 year old, it's inbred, and it never goes away. And so why is change management important? Because we are a species of individuals who like to have agency. And we don't necessarily like change. We like comfort. We like how things work. And when you bring new ideas to the table, like we all like to do, maybe it's how you talk to people, maybe it's how you market, maybe it's how you operate, you've got to deal with people. And so change management is always key, and you can never forget about that at the core, it's people.
And how do you kind of vision change management as part of kind of your overall data, analytics, AI strategy?
Yeah, I look at it this way. There's all sorts of surveys about why data or analytics projects or MarTech projects or why they fail. right? And we've all read them, and Forrester's has numbers that's like 89%. And we've been watching them for years, and I keep waiting for that percentage of failure to get better, and it doesn't. And what I've seen throughout my career, and having done this for a long time now, is if a project is going to fail in a technology space or analytics space or an AI space, the number one reason is you didn't have the data, because these things are hungry and people don't stop. It's like, oh, have I got the data flows? Is it set up? Is it clean? Can I feed this monster I'm about to create and bring off the table? But most of us are starting to figure that out. The number two reason is you didn't think about change management. You didn't think about people in the equation. So everything we do, I just learned the hard way over many years, is like you got to start with the people side of it.
Yeah, we've heard it a couple times. I think everybody on the panels yesterday was talking about change management, and so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, though. So we've all said we need change management. You have to do change management. Change management is important, but how? Like you're leading this. So what are 3 or 4, 5, 10, 50 ideas, whatever you got that we should be considering when it comes to actually how to do change management?
I think I can do 50 in 23 minutes, don't you all? I think I didn't. No. I think we've already heard the term framework a couple of times, and you've heard it over the last couple of days, and change management's the same way. So I'm a very simple person. My wife likes to say, well, if you were brighter, you wouldn't be so simple, and she's not wrong. But I think of it in a simple way. There's the structure of the organization you're trying to change, and then your approach of how you're going to go about doing it. And it's that simple in a 2x2. And when you look at the organization, there are two things you need to consider. The first is kind of the culture and the organization itself, and that has to do with how decisions are made and how people are rewarded. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're in a huge cross-branded company that's multinational in nature. Each of those brands, like we saw with gaming this morning, is independent. You believe in letting them run. And those folks view themselves that way. And how they're rewarded is their bonus. Yeah, they have some company stock, and it's the total thing. But depending on where you are in the structure, sometimes that's a lot, sometimes it's little. But my raises and my bonuses are based on my personal performance and my brand's performance. All right, so that's the table setting. And I come in as your data and AI person from the center, from corporate, and say, hey, we got this brilliant idea. All right, it's awesome. You're going to love it. No, trust me, you'll love it. We're going to bring it all together, and now some people are going to give and some people are going to get, and when we're all said and done, everybody will grow, or the company in total will grow. And he's like, oh, it sounds good. So he's like, wait, who's going to give? Who's going to get? Right? Well, yeah, okay, you'll lose a little, but this brand will get a lot. Okay, what do I get? Well, your stock price will go up. I'm like, no, wait. Like, how does that help me today? Like, what happens if my bonus goes down today? And I've seen this happen over and over again. People do it, and then they're just shocked when I got torpedoed. My project got torpedoed. I can't get support, and I don't understand why. It's such a great idea. Like, well, you just missed the fact that you went right up against how somebody was going to be rewarded, right? And how those decisions were made. That's at the global level. At a more individual level, you need to think about somebody's worldview. And what I mean by worldview is how they look about how they add value to the process. There's a great quote, former Disney, and if you're a Disney fan or a Marvel fan, there's a quote in Avengers where Steve Rogers is arguing with Tony Stark, and he's like, yeah, big man in a suit, what are you without it? And Tony says, billionaire, genius, philanthropist, playboy. Like, Tony had a pretty good sense of who he was before he ever put on the suit. And I have a really good friend of mine, Shala, who talks about using AI as the Jarvis suit. Like, you need to understand how people value themselves and that it's about enhancing that value. So another example, if we come in and look at somebody and say, look, I have this really great AI, this really great marketing system, or I have this really great operations system, and it's essentially, we don't mean to say it this way, but we say, it can do everything you can do except better and faster. And then again, we're surprised when people go, yeah, no, thank you. Like, no, no, it's awesome. It'll be good. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. And so understanding how people view themselves. So this is why I hate the term data-driven. I just hate it. I've never cared for it. Enhanced, right? Augmented. We're starting to see this now with people using the terms. How many times in the last 2 days have you heard the term co-pilot? Right? Not pilot, co-pilot. So that's one set of it. The second set of it then goes around your approach, right? And there's two things you need to think about that one. The first of all is transformational versus adaptive. We all want to be big transformational leaders, right? We got to make big changes. I view myself as a transformational leader. The problem is transformation's hard, right? And sometimes it can be painful. Right? Look, you don't believe me? Go on a 800 calorie a day diet and work out for 2 hours a day for a week and go look in the mirror. All you're going to find is a more tired, hungry, sore version of yourself. Right? It's an adaptive journey, right? And we know that about building habits. And so starting to look at your organization and say, okay, how much of this needs to be a big sea change versus how much of this can I do in an incremental, adaptive way, changing new habits, the way people work, bringing in new features of how they think about the world. And then having a balance of two. In fact, honestly, I wish this is where most of the people who get irritated by this approach are your CFOs. Like, well, I just gave you a bunch of money. Where's my big win? Right? It's coming. And so figuring out how to balance that out. And finally, the last is just being humble about all of it. There are some where most researchers tell us there's 4 to different types of intelligence. What's funny is, IQ, which is largely based around kind of math and reasoning skills, are the things that we put out as being intelligent. Well, I can do calculus, so obviously I'm amazing, right? Or I can code, so obviously I'm amazing. They're like, yeah, you're so smart. Or the more obvious things like spatial that shows up in sports or music. And then, so we see those things, and that's what we put out is the most obvious things. And then we, as humans, tend to value the things we're good at and undervalue the things that other people are good at, we're not so good at. But then we go into a situation, and you learn the hard way that people don't like working with people they don't like. And they really don't like it when you make them feel dumb, especially at your own expense. And as data scientists and technologists, we failed this so many times over. We walk in trying to show people how smart and amazing we are, and all we're really doing is trying to tell them how badly they do their jobs. And we're not trying to do that, but that's how it comes across. So always doing all of it in a very humble, approachable manner is kind of the framework we put out and how we think about it.
So it's interesting. I think incentive is one of those things that is maybe underestimated a lot of times or kind of an afterthought. Do you have examples of where you've used incentive in the past to kind of drive that transformation, drive that behavior, and did it work? Did it not work? What was kind of the outcome?
Yeah, I think one of the examples I've talked about for years, and I will keep writing it because it's one of my favorite, is years ago at Disney, 60% of our hotel bookings came through the call center. It's a big number on property. We're talking billions of revenue. And there was always this paradox of you got to take the calls quick because otherwise the queue backs up and people hang up. But at the same time, you want to sell as much as you can on the phone, but it's this really complex product. If you've ever tried to book a Disney World vacation, go try it sometime. It's really complex. And so we were always going back and forth about how we could make this a better process. And we came up with this idea of using AI to go and pre-populate the screens for the agents and say, all right, if we can get the right offers on the screen, then what we can do is we can speed up the call, but actually get the most revenue per call at the same time. And so we went to do it, but we'd also done some research around trying to figure out, well, what makes a good call agent? What makes a good call center agent? And we found that once you got past 6 months of training, we couldn't figure it out. Not age, not sex, not gender, not race, not like nothing. We could find no correlations to what our KPI, which was average revenue per hour. It just didn't exist that we could find it. And so we're like, this is a huge opportunity. We can do this. We did a test. It worked really well. So like, all right, we're ready to go. So we get ready to launch, and we didn't really think all the way through the change management at the time and the incentives. And a bunch of the agents in UAT started going, yeah, no, this is stupid. Like, what is stupid? It's like, that's not intuitive to me. I don't like those. Those offers will never work. Like, but the math says those offers will work. Trust me, we tested it. Like, yeah, no, we don't like that. Anyway, okay. So we went back to the drawing board, and we went back at this, and so we said, all right, first of all, this is, you guys know that some of you are better at this than others, because we publish your results, because that's how you get paid. You get bonus by being a top performer. So you all see that. This is how you get paid. Obviously, some of you are better than others. You know that. So here's what we've done. We've created a system that has a top performer sitting right next to you. So if you're a top performer, you're probably going to see exactly what you'd expect to see. There's not a lot more here for you, other than it'll do a better job of getting the right offers that you would usually have to go look for on screen first, so your time will speed up, so you'll close more deals. For the rest of you, you're going to start seeing what those guys are already doing. And so now your pay is going to start looking like their pay. So that's the first thing we did. And they're like, oh, okay. Then we did something else. The model was built on probability of acceptance of the offer, value to Disney on a total package, contribution margin, and then how incremental was the offer to us. Like, was somebody else going to come behind you to buy it even if you said no, so we could take a risk. And when we put it into the first set of UAT, we could balance out how we wanted to weight each of those things. And we dialed up acceptance to an 11. There's a Spinal Tap reference for you. And we dialed down contribution a little bit. And then we set it loose. And the agent's like, they're closing, right? People are taking offers on the screen. They're staying on like this. Yeah, this works, right? They weren't making as much money as they could. They didn't figure that out. It was just making their job easier because it was happening so fast. And then once we launched, we slowly just dialed it back, right? We just dialed it back a little bit, and they never noticed. They never noticed because their paychecks were going up, and they stopped going off screen, and they just started accepting what was there. And a project that had a 7-year payback, Performa ended up paying back in 18 months. And we took that, and we took that to ESPN and how we set up their sales and their processes in ABC, and we just rolled it out the same way.
So as somebody who's taking their extended family to Disney in 2 days here over the weekend, I can attest to the complexity of options out there. But obviously, it sounds like there was kind of two pieces to that, right? There's the incentive side, but then it's understanding, you know, where those agents and those testers were kind of coming from and how they were thinking about it. So do you have any advice for you know, those in your shoes and in other organizations about how to kind of understand that worldview, as you called it, from their users so that they can, you know, proactively kind of address this as opposed to reactively?
Yeah, shut your mouth and open your ears. There's no better way to say it. You got to listen, and you have to ask a lot of questions before you start coming up with answers. There's a great podcast out of Stanford called Think Fast, Talk Smart. And on it, there was an interview with Sarah Geffold, who's a psychologist who studies kind of negotiation. And she uses this really great story about two sisters who get into an argument over an orange. And it's a knockdown, drag out, and they end up just cutting the orange in half and splitting the orange. And it seems like a good win-win until you realize, well, sister number one wanted the orange because she was baking and she wanted the rind to grind up for her recipe. Sister number two was hungry. She just wanted the pulp to eat. But because they didn't stop and ask the right questions of each other and understand their motivations, they ended up essentially throwing away half the resources, and neither of them were totally happy. And it's this great analogy I see happen in business all the time. We don't listen to learn, we listen to react or to win the argument, because we have a predisposed way of where we want to handle it and where we want to get, and we think we're smart and we've seen it work before, so we're convinced it can work. And 9 times out of 10, what we need to do is just listen. I'll share another example with you from a personal standpoint. We had one of our markets that wanted to do something internationally, and it was my job to kind of say, I'm sorry, you can't do that. Right? And we were going back and forth, and I remember having the person on the phone. I'm frustrated, like, why in the world would you even want to do that? Can't you see how dumb this is? Da, da, da. So I finally just looked at him and said, look, Jay, if this were your money, would you do this? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. And he went on through a series of conversations to explain to me why my view is very US-centric. Now, it's my job to be someone, like, okay, and why in that part of the world this is actually a good idea and why it could work and why a lot of people do it. Oh, okay. Now, I still couldn't let him do exactly what he wanted to do the way he wanted to do it, but we did get to a place where he could meet the needs and do it in a little bit different way. And it gave me the support I needed to go up through the organization and say, no, this is why we're going to do it a little bit differently, and this is why it's okay. But it was that moment of realizing that, like, I wasn't listening. I was arguing to win my point and not trying to understand his perspective of what he was trying to accomplish, to say, like, whoa, we can actually get to the same place.
So it's interesting, both of those examples, the sisters and your personal one, you know, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't seem like, obviously, it works. So when you think about it from an adaptive kind of approach, how do you kind of manage that transformation, but take into account those kind of multiple stakeholders or that multiple viewpoints in the journey?
Yeah, there's no perfect answer here. It's so easy to sit up on a stage like this and say, like, I figured it out, right? People are just people, and individuals are individuals. And I laugh when we're a very decentralized org, and that we're designed to be that way. We believe it's core to who we are. We have a term at Yum, we call it bringing people with you. It's not taking people with you. It's not forcing people with you. It's bringing people with you. And it goes back to that, like, 3-year-old. I get all the time at the center, like, well, why can't we just make people do something? And I'm like, have you ever tried to just make somebody do something outside of, like, threat of violence or, like, back to that 3-year-old? It's in my job description. Well, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it's not. So it's taking that, putting all of that together, and understanding a couple of things that are always going to be true working with people, which is we need to understand the business problem and the human problem we're really trying to solve. Right? And so when people ask me what my GenAI strategy is, I'm like, well, what business problems, what opportunities, right? What can we take off of people to make it a better experience, take friction out of the process? Understand that first and foremost. Have a broad knowledge of the type of tools that can come to bear on that. And we got GenAI is another example. It's just got some really great, it's another tool in our tool belt. Awesome. It shouldn't be the only hammer, but it's another tool. And then you need a combination of transform wins and adaptive growth so that, because the board will get impatient. No, trust me, this is going to be awesome in 8 years. It'll show up in the stock price in 10. You just got to be patient. Now, there are moves we have to make like that, but if you've ever been in a data world or analogy, like it doesn't. So you need to make sure that I think about it as building a 6-lane highway. If I built one lane 100 miles long, that would sort of be useless in most cases. If I built 8 lanes 200 yards long, that would generally be useless, right? So what I need to think about is how I build 1 to 2 lanes, 10 miles at a time, getting those wins while I'm also thinking about how we build other lanes. This is quite candidly our data strategy. We start with domains. All right, let's get the sales data across the globe. Let's get it down to a transaction level. All right, now let's start adding customers. Okay, now let's start adding operations data. Now let's start adding this data. Let's start adding this. And so it's a wedge strategy. So at any point in time, we've always got something to talk about. Right? If you're like me, every quarter somebody's like, what are we going to say to investors? What are we going to say to the board? Right? We need messages. We need good things to say. We all do. But at the same time, I need to have a broader strategy toward building toward the wins.
So you've got the highway, you've got your strategy, you're going fast. What happens when culture's going the opposite direction? There's that disconnect, or they're facing a different way, or you have to turn them around. How do you manage that disconnect?
Yeah, it's hard. I'll go back to Yum. We have within our culture, we bought a company called Heart Styles, and we talk about it working with smart, heart, and courage, which is sometimes you just have to stand up and say, in a very humble, direct way, like, wait, maybe this isn't the direction we should be going, and maybe we should rethink about what we do. And our CTO and CDO Clay Johnson talks about all that. Talks about failing fast, and we just got to innovate fast. And the key is people like fail fast doesn't mean failing often and failing expensively, right? Some people are like, oh yeah, just fell a lot. That won't work. So sometimes you just got to know when to call it, stand up, right, in a humble way, make a call, and in some cases say, look, we made this move. Let's make decisions incrementally. This wasn't the right move. Maybe we need to change partners. Maybe we need to change direction and rethink through it. That takes courage, right? Because I don't know about anybody in this room. I won't ask for a show of hands because I know what it's going to be. I don't like admitting I was wrong. I don't enjoy being wrong, and I sure as heck don't enjoy failing, right? But we all do, right? And it takes courage to stand up and say, all right, maybe that wasn't the best decision. I see it now. I'm not characterized by failing often, but I am. And so how do I stand up and do that? Or in some case, call it out and help other people in a safe environment realize that's the case too.
So, we're winding down on time here, but I mean, looking forward, right? You've worked at NBC Universal, Disney, now Yum. I mean, that's a lot of consumers over the kind of the span of your career. What's next? What's on the horizon that you either think, is key to companies like that and companies out here that they need to be taking into account, that inflection point? What's going to be driving those changes in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah. I think we saw it with the pandemic that was already happening with digital conversion and personalization, and what our expectations as consumers are. And I watch it when my granddaughter picks up my phone because we just ordered a pizza and she wants to know exactly where the pizza's at and how soon it's going to be here because she can track it on the app, right? And she's like, it's at our door. That's the world she's grown up in. Far call from you and I picking up the phone, ordering a pizza, like, maybe I'll be here in 30 minutes, we'll wait and see, kind of thing. And so as those expectations change, I think that's where the world is changing and where it's going to become table stakes. That digital adaptation, changing customer experiences, the expectation that I want you to know me and remember me, and I'm going to expect you to deliver those experiences to me in a relevant way. And so companies who have not set up that infrastructure, have not set up that muscle, because it is a way of working, will not be the ones that are working and growing successfully 5 to 10 years from now.
All right, so before I turn it over to the audience, this is a chance to kind of think of a question or two. I always end with a personal question, and I didn't prep you for this ahead of time, but I think I'll keep it easy. What is your favorite Marvel movie, and why?
My favorite Marvel movie is the first Thor. And why is because I didn't expect it to be any good watching the trailers. I was sitting watching the trailers, and we did the marketing analytics for it years ago, just like how old I am. And I missed the mark. We missed the mark on how good it was going to be. And it turned out to be a really good base of a movie, and I like it because the characters, of all of the Marvel characters, Thor was the one that evolved the most and moved over time from a character development standpoint.
That's a great answer. All right, I got the blue cubes again. If anybody has a question for Cameron, one going that way, and I don't know if we'll... I didn't kick it like Mark was going to try, so...
Cameron, what are you most excited about that's upcoming with like this whole conference, and you've been here the last couple of days? What excites you the most that's come out of this?
That's a great question. I think it's the adaptation of GenAI into customer journeys. And I'm not like pitching anything on Treasure Data necessarily, but obviously I'm here and they're great partners, and like, I love working with them, and there's a reason why I'm here. But of the use cases around it, everybody gets excited about it. LLMs are sequence-based engines. That's what they do really well in a predictive space. And where better can you do that than in really orchestrating a true customer journey? And so when you see natural fits, you go, oh, that's super cool, right? If we figure that out, and if you figure out like really great Gen AI driven journeys connected with the ability to execute personalized creative, right? Truly get that into your ad networks or your ad platforms, then that's going to be super cool. I think that will be game changing. We got a ways to go, but that's the thing that I see and go, ooh, that could change how we all really think about this space.
Thank you.
You guys all seem tired from the party last night, but come on, we got to have a couple more questions for Cameron. All right, I've got one last one then, since I'll take advantage of this. We talked about optimistic, we talked about kind of future, what you're excited about. What are you worried about? What's on the horizon that might scare you a little?
There's a reason I make that "what color is your blockchain" joke. I worry with Gen AI right now that two things: that people are trying to develop a strategy solely around a technology, and that concerns me, that we could waste a lot of time and money. And while I'm super excited about that technology, we still haven't figured out 100% how to deal with hallucinations. And some really bad things could happen, and we've all seen examples of that already if you're paying attention in this space. And you can handle it by just creating a really expensive chatbot, which is not what we want to do. But people, because they tend to be lazy sometimes, it worries me that it will go badly because somebody who doesn't know what they were doing or should be doing with it will use it in a way they shouldn't be using it. And either there'll be a very strong negative impact on a large number of people, or it will cause a huge disillusionment trough on the technology altogether and set us back where we've all been working for the last 15, 20 years.
All right. Well, I think with that, we will wrap it up here. Thank you, Cameron, so much for joining us. What a great way to end. And we'll see. I think Mark is on stage next. So.